We're going to get more analysis now with France 24's Philip Turl and Marc Perelman, who joins me on this set. Marc, let me start with you. Let's talk a bit more about those images we saw earlier out of New York and how highly symbolic they were of Nicolas Maduro, basically on a perp walk.
Yes, absolutely. 48 hours after he was the president of his country, you saw those images of him being escorted from a van to a helicopter and from a helicopter to the van for doing the short ride from West Brooklyn to southern Manhattan, where he will be presented before a judge at 12 New York time, that is 6 p.m. Paris time. You could see him actually limping a few days after he was also seen dancing in his country. So maybe there was something in the U.S. intervention that left some consequences for Nicolas Maduro, not grave ones, but we'll have to see why we saw him limping on those images. But nevertheless, those are important images. The images of him appearing before judges are important ones, not only for Venezuela, but also for the Trump administration, because what we've been hearing since it happened is that this was not a military intervention. This was law enforcement. This was to bring someone who was already indicted back in 2020, nearly 6 years ago, for narco-trafficking, importation of cocaine, to a U.S. court before a U.S. judge. And so for the Trump administration, it's important to say, we're not against the law. We're not just going in, snapping people and just bringing them to another country without respecting the rule. This was, a forceful application of our rule of law because our judges want to hear Nicolas Maduro. So it will be obviously important to see. He will likely, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, will probably seek a non-guilty plea. They'll be probably sent back to detention, and the trial could begin in a few months or even in a year or so. And there'll obviously be lots of legal questions being asked. First of all, about the actual charges. How can you say that Nicolas Maduro was involved in narco-trafficking or not? But also about the way that he was kidnapped from his country, brought to another country. We can assume his lawyers, it will be interesting to see who represents him, will probably challenge the way he was brought to the United States. They might also say that he has presidential immunity, that he cannot be prosecuted as he was president when he was arrested. So there'll be a lot of legal issues. But the Trump administration wants this to become a kind of law and order issue rather than an international law complex issue. And that's also incurred a lot of criticism from other countries, including some allies.
Right. And there's also another big question, which is who indeed is in charge now in Venezuela. For the moment, it is Maduro's former vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who at first was very anti-Trump, but seemed to change her tune quite quickly and saying she does want to work with the U.S. What kind of negotiations might there be between the U.S. and Venezuela in the coming days?
There are clearly negotiations, and I think there have been negotiations for some time now. We know, and Trump has said so, and even the Maduro camp has said so, that the two men have been talking. The U.S. made several offers to Maduro to leave the country, go to Turkey, go maybe to other places. That Nicolas Maduro hesitated and in the end said no. He said the U.S. is bluffing. If I say no, they're not going to come and snatch me in. Obviously, he was wrong. But in parallel, there have been talks between Delcy Rodriguez, her brother Jorge, who is an important player, president of the National Assembly in Venezuela, and some American envoys, also some talks going through Qatar as well. And there was a proposition on the table whereby Nicolas Maduro would essentially step aside and Delcy Rodriguez would take over. So obviously what we've been seeing is not what was discussed because Nicolas Maduro was taken by force, but the end result could be that Delcy Rodriguez would take over, as you said. First, he said, Nicolas Maduro was abducted. He needs to be freed. This was an attack by the United States. Donald Trump then said, well, she could face a fate worse than Nicolas Maduro. And yesterday night, she said, Mr. Trump, We want to have respectful relations with the US. We want partnership. So a total change of tone. And so we can assume that there are indeed negotiations. We know she's been talking to Marco Rubio on a regular basis. The big question is, can she bring along the hardliners? That is the defense minister, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the interior minister, Diosdado Cabellos. We know that they are both military men. She's not a military person. Nicolas Maduro himself was not a military, unlike Hugo Chavez, his predecessor. And those are two very important figures. If they are not on board with some kind of US-driven transition, which we can assume they will not be, this will get things more complicated, because the idea that Donald Trump can do regime change via remote control, essentially from afar, from Washington, saying, okay, I want someone who will obey my orders, just work with me, work with US oil companies, do this, do that, seems like science fiction. So there's going to be a lot of very difficult negotiations, and there's no guarantee that what Trump's has repeatedly says he wants to avoid, that is an Iraq adventure, an Afghan adventure, will not happen in Venezuela if, indeed, he decides that the U.S. is now in charge of that country.
Marc, thank you for that.